Where did Allison go?
I'm right here.
No, I see. Yeah, there you are. Okay.
Okay.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian. I'm with Allison, and this is Maintaining Frame number 97. I know I still sound terrible, but I'm a lot better than I was. So I'm gonna power through this, and maybe Allison will do more talking than usual. So
That means I'll be the only one talking. I'll do all the talking. If I do more talking than usual.
yeah.
I don't know if that's possible.
So
But we'll try. We'll try for the impossible.
yeah. So, but I think this is actually a pretty interesting topic. We're going to be looking at a video by a couple kind of recently started making content called, they have a channel called Base Camp with Simone and Malcolm Collins, and they've appeared on side scrollers and like sort of in the Gamergate space, but also in other areas discussing these things, all kinds of things. But I think mostly they talk about politics and culture stuff, and they're kind of like trying to understand the incel phenomena. So they're talking about their impressions of it.
Well, that should be. Well, I guess it could be interesting. The impression of incels. The geek impression, because I get a strong geek flavor off of this couple. So, the normie geek impression on incels.
No, never mind.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No,
I was just checking my audio. I was coming out as an echo.
Yeah, it's.
But I fixed it.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one, folks, because the technical difficulties aren't just in the technology; it's also in Brian's larynx.
I think I'm fine now. It was just that the OBS was coming out of sound, and it was just I fixed it. It's okay.
Okay,
but
I will.
Anyway.
Yeah, I won't make you explain yourself now.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we just... Oh, wait. First, the things, of course.
Yeah, let's do the things.
Okay, all right. So if you want to send us a message at any time throughout the show, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. That's the very best way to send us whatever funds you want to send us, and the very best way for you to send us a comment. I don't think Twitter or Exeter or whatever it's called now has a means for you guys to send us comments, so this is the best way to do that if you're on Twitter. And if you're on YouTube, you don't necessarily want to send your comment through the YouTube enhancement system, the YouTube comment enhancement system. You may want to avoid that, so you can do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And if you want to support the show, we are doing our monthly fundraiser now at feedthebadger.com/support. And that's a really big help to make sure that we can pay for our expenses for the month and continue to bring you this very delectable content, this unique and delectable content. So once again, feedthebadger.com/justthetip if you want to send us a message and a tip, and feedthebadger.com/support if you want to support the show for the month. All right, so let's begin with the first.
Yeah. So let's get into the video, and we're gonna do an introduction. Well, a surprising study on the political leanings of incels.
Ooh.
So they're just kind of like exploring this concept.
Hello, Simone. It is great to be chatting with you today. I always love when statistics and new studies surprise me with information and help change my world perspective. And one such study came out recently on incels. And what it showed, many commenters have suggested a link between incels and the far right. However, using Pew Research's ideological consistency scale, this survey found that incels were slightly left of center on average. The exception was those who agreed with violence against individuals that cause incels harm, often justified. These individuals were right-leaning, though not extremely so. They held right-wing opinions for 60% of the items in the ideological consistency scale, compared to 45% for the rest of the sample.
Would you like to know more?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, honestly, I'm not really that surprised. And is that right to say that if a person is being attacked, they have the right to self-defense? Is that where we're at? I mean, I know in Canada, Well, technically it's very complicated, but constitutionally we have the right to defend ourselves. But when it comes to the actual judicial system, we don't have a right to defend ourselves because the judicial system will prosecute us, even in defiance of our it's not called a constitution, but I'll just call it a constitution to avoid getting into that particular
a document, a founding document.
A document related to Canadian rights. But I know in the US that's sort of a fundamental right, like to defend yourself. So is it
Second Amendment?
Right? Is it far right to want to uphold your constitutional rights? That seems quite the place to draw the line in terms of your politics. Wouldn't that be everyone, like everybody, both left and right? Wouldn't they, like, why would that be the dividing line? You just shrug. You just like
I mean I think the whole conversation around that is very distorted by our discourse. Like
yes, it is.
Yeah, it is a fundamental right. You have a right to your bodily autonomy essentially, and defense is a part of that. So I don't think that it should be seen as a political thing.
No, not at all.
Yeah, but here we are. So
yeah, I was thinking about that because I read something about how it's starting to feel like if you think the state should have limited, like that it should have limits on its power over the citizens, that you are actually on the right, which is astounding to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's true that there are essentially what it boils down to is the left is more concerned with security, which often leads to things like gun control, which is seen as, anti-Second Amendment because it is. So these things bleed in that way. But I think that ultimately, even the study that he reveals, where it's like, oh, it looks like most incels are left of center, with only some being slightly right of center. I think that the whole conversation is kind of pointless because that's basically suggesting that they're all pretty normal. And the way that we measure these things too is all screwed up in my opinion. Like what constitutes, leftist belief or right-wing belief. I think it's all screwed up anyway. But there are some things about this video that I find really revealing in terms of how like there is something to, I think, a significant number of incels that have a kind of feminist belief system, and feminism is leftism. So I think that male feminists are more likely to be incels because they have like this, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, I'm respecting women, I'm following all of the rules prescribed by my culture and education, and it's not working out, and I'm not allowed to have complaints, I'm not allowed to feel entitled. But I think that that's where, like, it starts there, right? It starts like with trying to please your mother or your older sister or something. And I think it's a natural, consequence of that. And I think this is the thing that people might be missing about this.
Well, the other thing is that it's almost like there's something else besides politics that is making men incels.
Oh yeah.
It's like it has nothing to do with politics. Maybe it has to do with things that might actually be completely unrelated to your political positions, and are things like height, natural inclination to acquiring muscle, physical attractiveness of other forms, like that. Maybe that's actually the defining line rather than politics. I know we all want to blame politics and personality, but maybe that isn't it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that there is the idea is that people with certain personality types are more likely to be politically one way or the other, and I think that's where they're operating from. I do believe that that's sort of putting the cart before the horse, because your personality is something that I think is there's a bit of biology, but there's a lot of socialization to it, environmental factors, etc., and your education. And I think that when you talk about Group X is more likely to be in this political camp, you're sort of like starting the story in the middle, if not towards the end. Yeah. So
well, let's hear what else they have to say.
okay, let's hear more.
And this is really interesting to me because, and this is one of those things where, the left, they just take a group that's bad and then they pretend that they are overwhelmingly right-leaning. As we always point out, until Obama was elected by 538 polling, so mainstream Nate Silver polling, white Democrats were less likely to vote for a black candidate as president than Republicans.
So
there is not a racist voting bloc on the right that doesn't exist on the left at about equal proportions. And it's the same with incels we're seeing here. Incels exist across parties. Generally, they're slightly on the left, but when they are more violent, which I guess would make sense if they're interested in getting guns and stuff like that and using them, they're going to come up as more on the right. But
well, I think that's
is
the
it
thing.
violent?
When
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, I'm just
But
let's hear what she has to say. If she corrects him, I won't.
I'll say this too. I think the way that the studies are done to determine someone's politics are also kind of, I don't think that they're a really good representation of somebody's beliefs. The political compass, I've often said, is crap, and people are starting to come around and realize it, because I think it was the people who designed the compass, and I looked into the guy who created it. He also had a bias going in, and this is why when we were on WIC TV the other day, and I said, can you guys list all of the traits? I was just further affirming this. So if you polled everybody, you're gonna find the overwhelming majority of people are gonna come up left of center, because that's where the normal sort of range is at. But that doesn't mean that the world is left wing, right? It's just the way the polling is done is not great. But I will say that that was the one thing I wanted to point out about this discussion is a little, and I think these people are really smart and they're being charitable, and I like their views overall. So this is not like us responding to feminists, but I think that there's some aspects of the conversation that they are participating in that have become normalized that I don't think are actually
Helpful?
accurate. Yeah, I don't think they're accurate, but okay.
I just wanted to say something.
Yeah.
Okay, before I do that, we are going to find out if she corrects him on being violent.
Yeah.
Because it's not being violent to defend yourself, in my opinion.
No, I think that she's actually more charitable to them than he is.
you see
Okay,
this
but-
I can't use the.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want me to play
No.
it?
Let's find out.
Okay.
Well, I think that's the thing. It's when you see this in, I can't use the word, people ending themselves stats, where women are far less likely to successfully end themselves, whereas men successfully end themselves. I think a lot of it all comes down to group efficacy. And I think that conservative groups have higher levels of efficacy in following through on things that matter to them.
Well,
So that's an issue.
I think it's more than that. I think if you think about what incelism actually is as a movement, you think about the ideology of the movement, it is an intrinsically far left-leaning ideology. So let's talk about this, and let's talk about why they're not.
So this is the part where I'm going to disagree with these people. And I like to come after leftists all the time, but I don't think this is an accurate representation of the incel population. I'll put it that way.
Not showing up as far left in the data,
Okay.
just slightly left-leaning. So specifically, what an incel believes is that they are owed something by society that they are not getting from society, and that the government should play a role in getting them that thing. If you look within incel circles, what do they ask for? What they ask for is government mandated prostitution, the government paid, they ask for, and you see this within incel communities. They want the government to find a way to deliver sex to them, or to impose social norms like forced marriages and stuff like that, which
Really?
would give them access to sex.
Okay, now I'll allow that there may be a subset of the incel community that would want government subsidy for something like prostitution without any kind of coercion. I think that's actually something that might happen in the UK for individuals who are disabled, that the government may subsidize the disabled to have something like a sex life using prostitutes, and so there may be precedents already in place for this kind of thing. I don't think that's personally, I don't think that's necessarily immoral. I mean, certainly it's not in line with maybe Judeo-Christian morals, but in terms of coercion, having the government, well, I don't want the government to get involved doing this, but hiring somebody to help someone who's struggling with their sexuality for whatever reason, usually it's a disability quite often, or sexual trauma in the past, or just not being attractive to the opposite sex. I don't have a problem with that. I don't think that there's a really large population of incels who are thinking that the government should mandate marriage. That seems a little odd. I think that from what I can tell, and maybe I'm being super charitable and I shouldn't be, most incels just really want it acknowledged that they aren't being picked for the reasons that they state, which is they aren't attractive in the face, they aren't 6 foot plus, they aren't naturally muscular and athletic, they have certain issues related to trauma in their past, they're disabled. They want just an honest conversation about why they're not attractive, instead of people just hand waving it about, oh, you just have a bad personality. It has nothing to do with the fact that you're in a wheelchair, you've experienced sexual violence as a child, and you're not necessarily considered physically attractive. A woman would definitely choose you if you just didn't have a horrible personality to go with all of that. And the other thing is that I personally consider the discussion around blaming people's personalities because you refuse to acknowledge that there is an incredibly shallow component to women's attraction. There is. It's just point blank. There's the hypergamous conversation, which is, I am the table, so what do you bring to the table to make you worth my while? So that's that inherent belief that female sexuality has value that men have to earn. And then there's also the extremely shallow lookist ideas of what is an appropriate partner. They have to be 6 foot plus. They have to be athletic and muscular. They have to have a very attractive face. And then there's also the emotional stuff. They have to be strong. They have to be basically pure. And what I mean by that is they have to be someone who doesn't have traumatic events in their life, or if they do have traumatic events, it's not going to impact the relationship. It's not going to become an emotional burden on the woman. She's not going to have to engage in a more emotional labor. And we don't want to have that conversation about how high women's standards are, and in some cases, how irrationally high women's standards are, and how that leaves a huge population of men without any chance and without even any way forward. In other words, like a clear, do this, do that, do this other thing, and you will get to the point of maybe having a relationship, which we've had in the past. There was sort of a clear pathway for young men to become attractive or to become socially attractive, right? And it doesn't really exist anymore. And there's this conversation, there's no honesty in this conversation. And I could see the frustration, and I think that's where a lot of incels come from, the frustration with nobody's being honest. So sure, there might be subsets of incels that are interested in prostitution paid for by the government, mandated marriage. I think from what I can tell, most of them just want an honest conversation about the problem that doesn't fall down to we're gonna frame this in a way that's flattering to women and dismisses the problem and puts it back on you by saying, oh, you just have a poor personality, bro. You're just an ugly person inside. You're just a goblin wearing a human face mask, how is that in any way doing anything but pushing it back on the person? Because how do you defend against that? You have a bad personality. That's why everything that's wrong with your life is happening. Because that's essentially the ultimate way of saying it's your own fault and it's not my problem. And so that's where I think a lot of incels are coming from, where the frustration is coming from, where the desperation, where I would say the suicidal ideation is coming from, because it's just not an honest conversation. I mean, I think people can endure a lot if people are just being honest with them, and they can look at this with less anger and less desperation and less disappointment and less fury and hatred if they know that people are being honest with them. You know what I mean? And I think that's where a lot of incels are. And then to turn around and say that that's entitlement. What? You cannot say that any population that's truly just after honesty is entitled, because they just want people to be honest with them. And be honest, but also be like, this is a problem. We don't know the solution, but we recognize that maybe it's not all on you. Maybe it's not just because you have the personality of goblins. Like, how do people get away with that? It's just like, yeah, it's your personality, bro. What a dumbass statement. Anyway, let's.
All right. We did get a Super Chow.
Cool.
I'll read it really quick. So thank you to God Had to Limit Brian's Power in Maintaining Frame 96, who gives us $5 and says, otherwise he would have destroyed the others with facts and logic. Well, maybe I'll have another opportunity to go on Wick and explain myself, because I think you're right. I was trying. Okay, let's listen to some more.
Sex, which are both incredibly left-leaning ideas. The idea that you are owed something by your fellow man, and that those who have a poverty of that thing deserve the state to equitably distribute that thing, or have a right to use the state to equitably distribute.
Okay, just real quick. Yes, I think that's true. I don't think it's a popularly held belief, but I have seen some incels saying it. I don't know if it's a meme, like a LARP, like repeal the 19th, and they're just kind of venting out their frustrations. I doubt that they're actually going to get any of that done. I remember I had Brendio on the show a while back, years ago. He was an incel guy that he was on like Jubilee a couple of times, and I had the opportunity to interview him, and he had said that he would like essentially to go to like a arranged marriage type of society. And I was like, well, that would be nice, I guess, but it's probably not going to happen. And I think we both just kind of accepted that. And at the same time, I mean, I don't know if it's something we really want, even if we could, but it's like repeal the 19th. It's like this, you're just venting. It doesn't have any real power. And that's the thing that I wonder if these people miss, is that when these guys, they talk about what they would like to see in the world, they don't have the backing of multi-billion-dollar corporations, in the same way that like Time's Up and Me Too do, or it's not, even if you don't like what they're saying, even if you think it's disgusting, it's not backed by any real threat. There's no real threat there at all, because men, not only would women never go for it, but the majority of men wouldn't go for it. So you're basically just pissing in the wind, and I just don't think it's that offensive if somebody's pissing in the wind, because they can't do anything anyway, right? Yet this is the subject of much contention, and I don't know if these guys address this, but the reason why the left frames incels as far right is simply because the left frames everything that is bad, which includes everything devoted or that has anything to do with masculinity, as far right. Like going to the gym is far right, having girlfriends is far right, having kids is far right, having a problem with women choosing the bear over you is far right, and being an incel is also far. All of these things are far right. So
yeah, if it's a bit of a head scratcher how that is masculinity, it's related to meritocracy. It's related to the expectation that you rely on yourself to gain whatever outcome you want, as opposed to rely on others, which is itself a masculine virtue. It's one of the things that sort of, well, it's the way that men often express themselves, their gender identity, if you want to use
Yeah.
that kind of language.
Yeah, like I said about the arranged marriages and the legalized, I don't know, like government issued prostitutes. I think it's a meme. I think incels know it's a meme. They know it'll never happen, but it is really interesting that people feel the need to respond to it as though it was a real request. They had a chance. It's like you're responding to this shows us like how sensitive you are to even the suggestion, right? So,
Yeah, you don't do like you don't do a reality check on this.
Yeah, you don't.
Just take a moment. This offensive statement, is this ever going to actually occur? Okay, then it's just offensive.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of a you issue. Okay, let's
A little bit more.
Okay.
Distribute that thing. And yeah, I mean, it's like, how is that not obviously a lefty position? And so then the question is, well, then why are they showing up as moderates on these surveys? And I think the answer is two things. I think that these surveys are wrongly, as I have pointed out, considering any racist views right-leaning, when really they're not. And I do know that racism is really common within incel communities. And they are counting
Which
anything.
is interesting.
Well, what's interesting about that is that the majority of incels, or a disproportionate number, are non-white. So, what does that say? I don't know. How are we defining racism in this case? Like,
What's really interesting to me is that if you take the entire intersectional stack and you shake it, and you take all of the men who have a slot on the intersectional stack and you shake it like you shake a tree, and that would be the incel community, to be honest.
yeah,
Disproportionately, it would be men who are disabled, men who are short, men who are overweight, men who are not white, men who are not neurotypical, okay, men who experienced traumatic events in their past. Okay, so that is these kinds of men are disproportionately represented in the incel community. So if you take the male half of the intersectionality stack, that's the incel community. So if you think about it, this is how they respond to all of the various slots on the intersectional stack when it's a man.
Yeah, well, yeah, because your race doesn't matter if you're a man. And I don't know if these guys know this, but this is like another data point that needs to be like wrestled with, because that, yes, you could say that maybe they have like strong opinions on, I think the racism that what they're calling racism is incels' opinions on the kinds of men that the women they desire choose, who might, for whatever reason. But I don't think that it's I don't know that. Yeah, like I think it's just a way of expressing, like
frustration with
the dating
with the dominant like beauty ideal for men.
Right.
Yeah, and it's but what my overall point is that essentially the incel community is the male half of the intersectional stack.
Yeah.
And this is how they treat them.
Yep, that's right. Okay.
It's pro-gun as a right-leaning viewpoint, which is also going to be common within incel communities given their goals, and that's also why when they turn violent, they come off as right-leaning. But this gets even more interesting. Well, first I want to hear your thoughts on this.
It makes sense. And also I learned that the term incel was actually started by a woman in 1997 who created a group for involuntary celibates. So
yeah, we knew that.
Didn't even have
let's
conservative
maybe go to the next
Skip
time
this.
code. If you
Yeah, we'll skip to the next part. So we'll skip to past the FM cells. Left's dehumanization of incels.
This idea of sort of banning even the concept
That's a
of
good
attractiveness.
segue from what I was
Like everyone
saying.
is actually equally attractive, and the only reason why you see like fat women is unattractive is because of social
norms.
And then, when incels are like, well, what about us? And they're like, no, what we mean by this is fat women should be allowed to have sex with conventionally attractive men and get those men in relationships. Not that we should have sex with men like you. of course.
I think it's time for another adult pre-K lesson. What do you think? All right, turn your listening ears on. Zoop, catch a bubble in your mouth. Good job. Okay, here's the thing. Having a preference is something like, I'm looking for a partner who likes kayaking, or wakes up early in the morning, or loves pizza.
Pausing for the banana. I don't know how these people would be about it, but essentially what they're saying is the body positive movement. This is something we already knew. The body positive movement is not for men. The body positive movement is for women. It is essentially to allow women that men might not find attractive to essentially make the case that those men should find those, that they're immoral, right, for not doing that. So it's just a way of fat women to manipulate men that would otherwise not want to have sex with them to have sex with them. So
it's women using their moral power to try to extort sex from men, sex and relationships from men, which is actually sort of despicable, because it's equivalent to someone using authority, a type of authority, over someone to try to extort them into complying with them or to consenting to them. So no, you don't get to do this. And no. I'm guessing that this woman is going to explain to us how a man's preference in body size is illegitimate.
Let's see.
But when your preferences exclude an entire group of marginalized people, that's problematic. Okay, that's not nice. That's not a preference. If you lump...
This woman's not marginalized. She is the margins.
All fat people in one group together as though they are not very different individuals. That's fatphobic.
Yeah, but you're all fat.
Just like lumping all black people in one group and saying, I don't like black people is racist.
So, I mean, it's...
Wait, but...
Like, can black people change their race by changing their diet?
Yeah, I mean, like... I don't... like. You're not owed sex or a relationship or sexual attraction from other people, lady. So what is your point? Like, honestly, once you say that to yourself, I am not owed anyone being attracted to me. I am not owed anyone consenting or extorting anyone's consent to me sexually or their consent to a relationship. What is her position once you accept that? What's her position? She has none. She can't just say, well, whatever factor you're excluding from, whatever factor you're using to not consent to my sexual interest in you is illegitimate and is discrimination, and that's something the government should get involved in punishing. That is some sick shit right there. Like, think about that. There should be no, like, if somebody doesn't want to have sex with you, you shouldn't start getting rules lawyering about what's acceptable. And this is the thing. It's like this fat woman is rules lawyering about when it's acceptable for men to say no to her. That's like at all times and at all points, it is acceptable for a man to say, you don't get access to my penis, lady. Like that there's no point at which you get to rules lawyer that. As soon as he says no and turns away and tries to redress himself, that is a no. Like, do you get what I'm saying? It's just astounding.
Yes. It is, but it's not really shocking, though, is it?
Yeah, I don't even think incels are saying that. They're not saying that women are... Well, maybe they are. Maybe they're saying that women are, at the very least, are shallow for not wanting based on these factors. But that's true. But on the other hand, they have the absolute right to be shallow about the partners that they want, just like men have an absolute right to be shallow, because nobody has a right to rules lawyer another person's consent to sex. Like, that's ridiculous. The hive mind has decided that you're not consenting to me is illegitimate. Take your pants off. Do we want to live in that world? I don't think so. That is the actual... Honestly, what the scenario that I've just described is the actual biblical story the Handmaid's Tale is based on, but it was against a man. Like basically his future father-in-law rules lawyered him into having sex and marrying a woman without his consent. And then his wives rules lawyered him into having sex against his consent. So it's just when you actually read that story, it's astounding that Margaret Atwood took from a story of the sexual exploitation of a man by society and his wives. She took from that, oh hey, women most affected.
Of course.
So, okay, wow.
I know.
And then feminists are like, oh, why is it that society doesn't recognize the sexual abuse of men? Because people like Margaret Atwood take a classical story that recognizes the sexual abuse of men, even if it doesn't in sort of a black humor way and an explanation for all the tribes of Israel. It recognizes that this is something that's not good, because the other argument is that it's punishment for Jacob's prior actions in the Bible. And she turns it into something in which women are victims. If you are going to take every situation in which men are sexual victims and then reframe it, do the little the feminist cranking the sausage wheel, and out comes women as victims. Of course, people are not going to think that men can be victims, because feminists are taking obvious depictions of male victims and turning them into depictions of female victims. And look at the whole thing that's come out of The Handmaid's Tale. This story of the sexual exploitation of a man, the rules lawyering of a man's consent, has turned into this gigantic phenomenon that's all about the sexual exploitation of women. Well, like, you are constructing this. Okay. I'm sorry, that was a bit of a digression.
Sorry. Playing more of this.
It's very delusional when you get into these far lefty circles. They don't really have any sense of some sort of real ethical core to them. They're just sort of, I want what I want, I'm owed what I want, which is a very easy sort of mindset to spread or disseminate. But this all gets interesting to me in framing, because the left really dehumanizes incels constantly.
Yeah. Which is weird, because incels really represent that external locus of control and entitlement that epitomizes the left, at least per our perception.
Wow, this is really interesting, because these two are okay. And what's interesting is that when Richard suggested this or requested this as a response, he's like, notice what they're not talking about, what they aren't picking up on. And of course, because they're saying, well, this is like a perfect leftist attitude of entitlement, that the government owes this, that, and the other thing. But they're like, why is the left so mean to the incels? When the incels have an attitude, have politics that are compatible, and they have attitudes that are compatible.
Yeah.
We need some
there's an aspect of some Jeopardy music.
Yeah,
some think.
Dun, dun.
I have something. I have some thinky effects.
Get the thinky music. I'll do the.
It's not music. It's
you can see the calculus going here. I wonder what it could be. I wonder why it is that the left is so vicious towards incels, when the left is not vicious towards that fat woman's basically saying, I should be able to rules lawyer men's lack of consent to my sexual interest.
Doing me a big thonk on that one.
But yeah,
all right.
This is the thing. Like, this is what they don't seem to be picking up on, and it's why we need our discourse, huh? Because we fill in that gap, as it were. Actually, you know what? I will do the things now. That's a good place to
do it. Yeah, let's do some things.
Okay, so just to remind you guys, because we haven't got a lot of Super Chows yet, and this is a really interesting topic, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. So go to feedthebadger.com/justthetip and you can give us whatever, so give us a tip and send us your comments. And you avoid the YouTube comment enhancement system, and we get the full benefit of whatever funds you send. So once again, that's feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And if you would, please go to feedthebadger.com/support and support the show. Because we exist because you guys continue to make sure that we have the time to do this work. So feedthebadger.com/support. And we are here to fill in the gap that these two that these two individuals are doing a big thunk about. Why is it that the left isn't embracing incels when incels' attitudes and politics are so much in line with the left?
I think they get up.
Do you get the
I
big
think that
thunk music?
I put like a visual effect on the screen.
Oh,
I don't have the music. I have the
should get you the
fail
music.
from. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so what's going on here? I
What
I
is
think
going on here?
the
Well, I
left is
think
dominated
the
by
left is
female.
anti-male. Don't you think that's just the easiest, broadest answer? The left
Yeah.
is not pro-male at all. I mean, when's the last time a man has been?
The left will elevate like attractive men who they will, even if they're sometimes.
Okay,
a
who?
little
Give
crazy.
me an example of the left really backing up a guy. I mean, you know,
No.
Yeah, but
No,
Biden's a puppet.
No. The thing is that she's right. He's struggling with this. I don't know why he's struggling with this, but the left will support men who support them. Not like or she says something that I said. Let's listen to the rest of this. It's good. It's good. She's right. I like her.
no, they don't back him
I guess
up.
they didn't bully Obama.
They tolerate him.
Oh.
I'm talking about, you know, a not already famous leader. You know what I
I mean,
mean?
a lot of the leftist YouTubers are men. Destiny, for example.
He's useful
Would you
to them.
consider him
That's all.
leftist? He seems just kind of his own
They
thing.
don't. Okay,
Famously
he's
leftist,
struggling with the difference between supporting men when they have issues and supporting men when they're useful.
Yes.
And the
Right.
reason I think that if I can make a analysis,
There's
probably
utility.
why-
There's utility to these guys. That's it.
Yeah, the reason why he's struggling with it is because he very much conflates men with utility. So he doesn't.
Yeah, he might
he's
struggle
having.
with
I think
that,
he's
yeah.
struggling with the distinction that she's making. She might be
Mhm.
struggling with it too. She can't clearly articulate it. When men are not useful, the left has no use for them, which is why all of their supposed socialist rhetoric just hit like a rat out of an aqueduct. Just
Yeah.
gone.
It,
It's just
it melts. Unless,
it melts.
again,
It
if
gets
those men-
ejected into the stratosphere.
if those men choose to live as women or they like become queer or in some other way they're useful, then they will be accepted, but not as men.
Not
Not
men.
as men.
The instant
So-
men have an issue
Yeah.
that they could use help with,
Yeah.
all of the
become a
liberal
burden.
socialist rhetoric in the left just gets ejected into the stratosphere, and they start well, what about his bootstraps? Bootstrap himself. Why
Yeah.
can't he do it for himself? Well, we don't he doesn't owe it anything. What is he entitled? Is he entitled to help when he has problems? He should be able to lift that boulder. Yeah, he should be able to lift the mountain. He should be able to lift all of society. What men don't have needs. That it all becomes the most not even conservative, the most stereotypical, cartoonish interpretation of the left's idea of what a conservative is.
Yes.
You just take any leftist and you simply say, what about men when they have this problem? And you get instantly, well, they need to do it for themselves, brah. Like, who's gonna, they shouldn't be entitled. They should have no expectation. They should have no programs. They should have no help. They should all do it for themselves. The instant you do that. So
Yeah.
their socialism is about as deep as, well, I mean, can you really call them?
Their compassion exists on a hierarchy, and
Yeah.
men are at the bottom every time.
Yeah, at
So-
the bottom. And the thing
yeah.
is that's their real, when you think about it, that's their real ideology.
Yeah.
Because if your socialism gets ejected to the stratosphere the instant you talk about one group of people, then it's not, the principle isn't socialism. It's misandry.
Mhm.
Like, honestly, that's the real
So-
ideology is men get shit.
Yeah.
That's it.
So I got a Super Chow. Do you want to read it?
Sure. Oh,
From
yeah.
Richard Bier.
Okay, I'm going to read the Super Chows, everyone. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a
Okay,
mouthful.
Richard. Richard Bier gives us 500.
Thank you, Richard.
All right, all right, all right.
How many times have those declared to be incel have followed many different formulas to get into a relationship and still have been rejected? The effort to correct an ick reveals that there is different ick to correct, and upon correcting the next one, there will be another box to tick to the point that it becomes a fool's errand. Yeah, that's true. Like, and there isn't, because our society hasn't, we're in a position now, and this is me, I guess, revealing more of my power level. So we are in a situation where our society used to have a very clear pathway for men to gain a sense of the social attractiveness, not necessarily sexual attractiveness, but social attractiveness. And that was get a job, be cooperative, earn in the hierarchy, establish a position. And often, I mean, we're talking about a time when even being like a gas station attendant had a certain cachet, right? It was considered a respectable occupation. And now we're not there anymore. And so that pathway for men to develop a sense of social approval. So this idea that by engaging with this community of men, because the jobs at the time were more male focused, and there's more like a demarcation between male and female jobs. You engage with the community of men, you gain status through that engagement, you demonstrate worth through diligence, discipline, effort, being conscientious. And through that process, you establish yourself as socially desirable, which is a big component of being desirable as a future mate. That's all gone. And our society hasn't replaced it with anything. And so instead, it replaces it with all of this woo and superstition about how to attract women. I mean, really, have you heard all the shit that people say? Like, you know, for example, they'll sell it to incels. Well, you know, the reason why you don't have a woman is because your personality is shit. So all you have to do is just be yourself. Like, that's just utter bullshit. Like, that's just superstitious nonsense.
Yeah.
Like it's all just weird shit, like urban legends and weird crap. And it's like, no, a successful society has a clear way, a clear connection between men demonstrating competency, discipline, conscientiousness, cooperation, and hard work. It has a clear way between that and becoming socially desirable, which then makes them desirable as mates. And it's unique for men. Right? That's what a successful society does. It doesn't replace all of that with a bunch of bullshit about, oh, well, if you go out on a waxing gibbous moon and you shake your voodoo rattle 9 times, and then you also chant the I have a good personality chant 17 times, and then you do it again when it's a waning crescent, and then you will get a girl. Because a lot of the shit that they say to men is exactly as stupid as that.
Yeah. Okay, I got a couple.
What's really happened is that our society has just decided that this is work it no longer has to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have a theory that women like the mystery. They don't like the idea that men might figure them out. But that's a whole other thing. I think that's the main problem they have with AI girlfriends too. But okay, I got 2 super chats I should read. So Albernator Retro gives us $5 Canadian and says, Destiny is a sellout. He threw men with boundaries under the bus by saying they were misogynistic. I would argue in order to be a sellout, you'd have to be on somebody's side to begin with, which I don't think he was. Then Albernator Retro gives us another $5 Canadian and says, Destiny also claimed that laborers, including tradesmen, were bottom-tier men. Well, I never knew a tradesman who lost his wife to a twink in a skirt. Well, it's very easy to take the men who are basically the backbone of our civilization for granted when your job is being a professional streamer. I'm not mad about it, but it just shows you how out of touch somebody with that opinion is. Okay, anyway, and especially ungrateful. Um,
Okay, let's go to the next
But
time
let's-
code. Unless
yeah,
there's more.
so there's a little bit more here.
There's some other.
That's good.
Bosch is a leftist.
Yeah, but
You
are
know,
people backing him up? Are people?
well, no, the left always attacks itself, but it attacks
Let me-
itself with its women.
Okay.
She
The
says
only
something
time I've
good.
really seen
Yeah.
the left will say
Here.
stand behind men is when those men have been killed by police, like George Floyd or something. Well, I don't know if he was
okay,
really
there
killed
you
by
go.
police, but you know what I mean, where he's dead. Otherwise, they would never really stand by a guy. I just
Yeah, because it serves a purpose. And when she said that, I was like, I have said this exact thing. Whenever with Black Lives Matter, and it's from the beginning, it's been this way. They only care about the lives of black men when those black men are killed in a way that could serve the movement. It doesn't have to be legitimate. It doesn't have to be like in a way that it's actually unjust. It just has to happen in such a circumstance that it can be used by this group, which is run and operated by communist women. And they made millions and millions of dollars. So she is right about that. And I'm glad that she brought that up. And I don't know if this guy kind of reminds me of another iDubbbz clone caught that. And I got another Super Chow from Jared Pierre. But do you want to say anything to that first before I
will read it out because spare your voice.
Okay.
Okay, well, what I wanted to say is I think she's struggling with how to articulate what she is saying is, when does the left stand by a man? That is, when does the left actually help a man or advocate for men when they have problems? And the answer is almost never, unless they can immediately turn it into some kind of intersection, immediately refine it into victimhood they can relate back to women. Okay? And what he's saying is, but the left will stand by these men who are standing up for the left. Well, that's a different thing. Like, they're being useful to the left. They're not requiring the left to do anything for them. The instant a man would require somebody to help them, the left will just start spouting what they consider to be conservative talking points instantly. Or let's call them libertarian talking points, right? Which is, self-reliance. Libertarianism, you could say that that's much more consistent with self-reliance, right?
Yeah, or kind of a straw man masculinity.
Yeah, strong immediately. So that's what she's essentially saying, is that the left doesn't extend itself to help men. And he's sort of struggling with that because he's conflating supporting men with men gaining approval. And I think there's probably a reason for that. And I'm not casting shade on him. I'm just saying this is a blind spot that men have, is that they will conflate being helped with being approved of. And it's because because men have this kind of, I think, I don't want to say the word deficit, but they have this desire to have an external standard to take their identity from maintaining an external standard. So because they have that need or that desire, when they get approved of, that to them feels like it is the same as being helped, if that makes sense. It's like it's the more important thing. And I know that might not be the best way to describe it. So let me just respond to Richard Beers. So Richard Beers sends $5. In addition to what Allison said about the woo technique in obtaining a relationship, they also have to be facing east while juggling chipmunks in the nude. Yeah, exactly.
Obviously.
That's how you get a woman, guys. Let's just, and it really is. It's just a bunch of woo and superstition and voodoo. I particularly, I'm going to just repeat this. I particularly like the one where they go, the problem is your personality, bruh. That's why you're not getting a woman. So just be yourself and you'll get a woman. It's like, could you be any more useless? And also, this isn't my problem. The problem is on you. Why waste my time with this? Go away. I mean, that's basically what it is. It's basically like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Dude. Okay.
Right. Okay, I got a Rumble rant
Okay,
from
great.
OIC for $1. and he says, "Oh, Richard, you are a Giga Chad." All right, I should get the Giga Chad music and put that on here as a soundbite. Thank you. If you see Rumble Chan on the screen, it means I saw the Rumble rant, and just leave it there as a placeholder. All right, and then I got one super chat from Albert Nada again. Gives us $2 Canadian and says, "Black lives didn't matter when it was Tyree Nichols." Thank you for that. All right, let's. I think there's a little bit more in this part, and we'll move on to the next bit.
See how much more they struggle
I
with
think
this.
it's an anti-male thing, and so
I think
doesn't matter how.
word it a little differently. I think that the left, the power circles within the left are controlled by female interests.
Okay.
Females have an intrinsic disgust towards men they see as being low sexual market value. This is just a thing. It initiates a disgust reaction. Most people, when they have a disgust reaction, they apply a moral negative to the thing that's eliciting the disgust reaction.
Okay.
This is why, historically, like if you see somebody who's diseased or disabled, most people's natural response in a historic context is they must have done something sinful or wrong, right?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah, there's something wrong.
Okay, I'll accept that. I think that I think they may be talking past each other a bit. I mean,
I think they are, because if they started by saying, "I think the left is anti-male," and then he is trying to like counter it by saying, "Well, I think that it's," what did he say, "informed by female
disgust response to low status men."
Yeah, so then are all men low status? Because you started by saying anti-male, and now you're saying, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you saying
I
that?
think what his point is that it's not anti-male because the disgust response isn't to high status men, but like that's sort of like saying we don't whip a well-behaved slave. but ultimately, because we don't whip a well-behaved slave, the system is pro-slave. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if you judge men based on whether or not they elicit disgust response in women, is that not in a way anti-male? And I mean, again, it comes back to supposedly low status men aren't necessarily entitled to sexual interest from women, but I think they are at least entitled to honesty from everybody.
Yeah.
So but that's the thing. Like, it's more than just this is a disgust, and we're just basically saying, oh hey, yeah, incels, it's just you just elicited a disgust response because you're low status for these reasons. Just be honest.
I mean, yeah, but this goes back to what she was saying is that what they were talking about is, why is it the left is not sympathetic to men, right? And she was trying to make the argument that it's just an anti-male thing, and he was trying to make the argument that it's only like not like they will stand behind the highest status men. So this is not like just the men that are below average. This is like everyone below the top, right? Below the apex. And then she responded by saying, well, the only men that they support are the men that have utility, like black men who are killed, right? For example. And then he said that, well, I think it's just like a female disgust thing. Let me go back a little bit. So
no, you don't have to. I got it. I think also it just ties into that whole, I think he defines men by their utility to women.
Right.
Therefore, it's acceptable. It's not anti-male to define men by their utility to women. And she's like, well, no, if men have needs and you shit on them, that's anti-male.
Right. And it's not like they're only shitting on the men that these women find like disgustingly ugly. It's like basically the overwhelming majority of men, kind of like the OkCupid studies, right? Because you're not talking about, like, there are incels that are not that unattractive, and they're not even talking about incels, they're just talking about men. So it's sort of like expanded the discussion, and he's still thinking of it like, oh no, it's totally like, he's not seeing what she's saying.
Okay, yeah. He thinks it's acceptable for women to judge men in this manner because, again, I believe that he is somebody who sees, as a man, he wants an external standard to judge himself by as being good or bad, right? So he's
Yeah.
not going to be able to pick it up in the same way that she does. Like
Yeah.
for her, it's like because she's a woman and women sort of think the way women do, she sees that as being anti-male. And I think that he doesn't, because he sees it as legitimate sorting of men into good and bad, basically.
Yeah.
Or at least something that he understands and he can approve of in certain circumstances, like the
Right.
sorting method. You see, get what I'm saying? So it's
I
just
do.
two different ways. Two different ways. One is masculine, one is feminine, and not surprisingly, the man is seeing the world in the masculine way, and the woman is seeing the world more in the feminine way.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So I got a super chow from Richard Beer again.
I'll read it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Richard Beer gives us $5 and says, "Is it just me, or does Simone look like she could be carrying many mugs of beer at Oktoberfest?" I was thinking about that. She does that does look a little bit Oktoberfesty.
Like a Ren Fair look. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
these two are kind of like eccentric. Okay.
Ren Fair nerds.
Yeah. Well, they were on these Gamergate things. So, all right. So we have historical presence of incels, and their impact on civilization, traditional cultural solutions for neutralizing the negative effects of incels. I think that's a good bit right there.
Okay.
Okay, so
Speaking that incels have been around because there were a lot of men who didn't get to enter the gene pool. We see a lot
there was
more
always been
diversity right
incels.
from female genes, indicating that
Yeah.
there were a lot of men who just had a ton of partners, of female partners, and then way more men who just had zero partners. So why do you think that incels are more of a thing now, or have incels always been a thing and they've played a big role in the rise and fall of civilizations?
Well, I think that different civilizations related to incels in different ways
Mhm.
and had different cultural technologies for neutralizing the negative effects that can come from incels, because you do see negative effects from incels. Typically, the more
Yeah.
unmatched men you have in a society, the higher the rates of terrorism you're going to have, the higher rates of prostitution you're going to have, the higher rates of murder you're going to have, the lower rates of trust in business deals. There's been some studies on this. It's really fascinating. And actually,
I'm just pausing for the banana. I don't know if you want to say
Okay.
anything.
So, well, societies with higher numbers of population of men don't see this kind of social instability. I wonder if this is sort of an attendant problem with like polygynous societies where one woman or one man has multiple women and the rest don't have a real reason to invest in the social fabric. But also, like, it seems to me that it's sort of a male role to help build that aspect, that public social fabric in a way. Like, for example, in hunter-gatherer tribes, when a man has a big kill, he comes back and he shares it with the entire tribe. So there's this kind of quality where men are responsible for the overall harmony in their community. And if there's a bunch of them that don't feel like they're in any way benefited by participating in the community, they're not going to do that for obvious reasons. So, I mean, it seems like it's really, I mean, this starts to feel like it's almost like making men sinister, which I really think is unfair. I mean, if you're in a community and the community is shitting on you and you don't participate in it, is it really on you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is something to, so like, if you have a lot of men and they don't have any romantic prospects and they don't have any familial prospects and they also don't have, I think that they lose their sense of purpose. And if they don't have a purpose, they can become self-destructive, at least. You know, maybe that doesn't hurt anyone, but potentially there is some chance of like expanded, destructiveness outside. And I'm not saying that to make it sinister, because I think that women have another way of doing that, with like, promiscuity or whatever. But what I think
it occurred to me. Okay.
Yeah.
When
Go ahead.
I was watching women be sort of evil, and it occurred to me that the difference is that when men are evil, they tend to be really obvious about it and on the outskirts of society. Like, I mean,
Sure.
aside from the psycho, like the supposed number of sociopaths who get into positions of power, but for the most part, when men are overtly evil, they tend to be marginalized, they pushed out. But when women are actually being evil, that doesn't happen. They stay in the center. When they're being destructive, they stay in the center, and they continue to be destructive with the support of society. So society starts to coalesce around their destructive behavior. And I found that really interesting. So that, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like, it's when men are destructive, they tend to end up being worked out into the margins of a society.
Yeah.
Whereas-
Well,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, continue. I
Well,
was the one who interrupted you initially.
I was just no, it's okay. I was just saying that I think that in our modern world now, a man's worth seems all bent on whether or not he can find a woman. And I think that because there is this, like, we're in the midst of essentially a reproductive bottleneck, there will be a lot of men left on the wayside that will not get a woman. But the thing is that I think the idea that that was the only goal is a very recent idea. I think that men would have been fine doing other things that they want to be a part of the society. They want to build something. There are other ways, like they could become monastics. They could, become
Priests.
like priests.
Priests, yeah.
Yeah, or essentially do something else. Like I won't be able to have children, right? Because of the cancer. So if I wasn't married, I would, like, what would I do? Like, how would I find a purpose? And I could go into, like, something, right? I could go into education. I could become a coach or a trainer or something. But the problem is that men are excluded from so many things that they could be doing, and they're also being told simultaneously, if you don't have, a woman, then you're not worth anything. So we're basically not giving them any pathways. So why wouldn't they either, just like retreat into themselves, which I think the majority will do, or worse, lash out at the world. And I think that this is like what we've always done through history. If you had a guy, and I don't know, like, say he like lost his leg in the war or something, and he's not going to find a wife, he would still have a purpose. He would work somewhere doing something, helping other men, whatever, I also think that being, like, atomized from your extended family and not knowing your father and all that is a big part of it too, because you've lost, like, a bunch of your network. So
All right, let's
play some more, okay?
yeah.
Actually, if you see like bouts of terrorism in the Middle East, they often correlate to economic problems that prevented people from paying their bride price, which led to a bunch of unmarried, incel young men because they're not having sex outside of marriage in these cultures.
Mhm.
And so that motivates terrorism. And it makes sense from a genetic level why
Well, I don't know if it motivates it. I think that it is useful. Like, Islamic terrorists making incels in Islam. They do that here in the States. Like, they literally groom young men to become terrorists.
would. Like you go for broke. Like your brain basically gets scrambled and you go for broke when it realizes it has no shot of reproducing. And then you're devalued by society. But in a historic context, we did not dehumanize, most cultures did not dehumanize incels to the extent that a lot of societies today dehumanize incels. So by this, what I mean is, in Catholic culture, for example, if you were an incel, you could always just join the church priesthood, right? As we've mentioned, the church's priesthood is predominantly same-sex attracted. It's like 52% or something like that. So that was both their solution to men who were born same-sex attracted and men who otherwise couldn't get partners and now can join this like high status thing, which prevents them from, and that affirms it within their community, right? And it prevents them from taking negative actions because they're like, oh, this is why I'm celibate. I'm celibate because I'm like a good person, right? Like I've done
Well, the way that it would work is they would have one son that would inherit, and this is just for the aristocracy. They'd have one son that would inherit all the lands. They'd have one son that went into the military, and then one son would go into the priesthood. You know, and so that's how they sort of apportioned all of that in a situation where you can't really break up the lands because it becomes each generation, it just becomes really untenable, basically. But the thing with the going into like the priesthood or becoming a monastic is that there's a lot of importance that's granted to the activities of men who are engaging in that. So, for example, the liturgy of the hours, you know, would be considered vitally important to the well-being of the community. And also the well-being of people who have passed for the relatives of the community. So there's everything, the activities of these men. And of course, if you go into the military, the activities they always have an importance. It's fairly obvious. But the activities for men who would go into like have a religious calling, which they didn't usually have a religious calling. It was just sort of what they did. But their activities would be considered to have considerable importance to the community. So they would still be connected to the community despite not having families. So they would be counseling community members. They would be healing community members. They would be ensuring that the dead relatives of community members are being, you know, I'm not exactly sure how it works because I'm not Christian, but that they are ushered into heaven. Or that process is supported. And I would have to look it up again because I know that the liturgy, like the hourly prayers was really critical to something, but I do not remember what at this moment. But it was really critical.
I couldn't tell you about Catholicism.
Yeah,
I don't know much. So.
But Catholicism was like huge in Europe for a while.
Yeah, it was huge.
So the liturgy of the hours was really critical to some aspect of the community. And the community was willing to pay for men to just do that, just do the prayers every hour. And but that gave their actions a sense that they were woven into the community, that they were critical to the to the success of the community and all of that. So basically all the men were covered. You know, you got married, all right, then you're a father and husband in the Lord. If you're part of the peasants class, same thing. Most of them probably married. If you went into the army, then you're defending the land. If you went into the priesthood, then you are somebody who's taking care of the spiritual needs of the community, even if you don't even meet with the community. But so there's always this sense that you are part of something greater and you are serving something greater. And I think that's the big thing that maybe is really lacking with young men today, is that sense of a greater purpose.
Absolutely.
To the community.
And it doesn't have to be religious, but like we're taking everything away from them is what I'm saying, right? Like you couldn't even like start a business to master a trade easily or join some club or start one. I mean, this is the thing. Like there were always incels. They've always existed. But for probably most of human history, we didn't like dehumanize them to the point where we didn't give them something to do.
Or
right?
some purpose.
So, some purpose, exactly, is what I mean by that.
Okay.
All right. Let's do some more of this.
This extra pious thing. Then there's other cultural groups, you know, like in Rome or something like that. Like what happened to the incels? They joined the military, right? There's plenty of raping to be had when you are on the warpath, or you die if you're unfit, you know. And this was seen, and the military was lauded. You know, these men were seen as the best and the bravest and the best of the best and everything like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a woman can't resist a hoplite in uniform.
Well, like the graping, I think might be overstated too.
Yeah, I assume so. I heard that and it kind of like set my off alarm bells. I was like, I don't think that happened all the
I don't
time.
know. Like the thing is that when you look at the statistics of graping in the military, and this is what, if you actually look at it, the rate at which civilian women are actually aggressing against military men is pretty astounding. And I know that blows people's minds, but the problem is that when you think about using a false accusation to elicit consent from a man sexually, that's even worse for a guy who's in the military. Like the pressures on them are even worse than on civilian men. Because they have even less of a sense that, or even more, a greater expectation. Well, why did you fight her off? Oh, you fought her off? Well, you must have raped her. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And honestly, like that's the double, the catch-22 that really gets, like, James Landreth was raped when he was in the military by a woman who was pregnant. So it's like, that's what, triple the jeopardy at that point?
Yeah.
Why didn't you fight her off? And if he had, he probably would have been gotten in for attempted murder of a fetus. Like,
Yeah.
it's, what the heck are you supposed to do? And that conundrum for men of why didn't you fight her off? But if you do, you're going to jail. That conundrum, like, goes double for men in the military. And women know that. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but women have a sixth sense when it comes to these kinds of social situations of social leverage.
Yeah.
And if you get a site, like, and it's not, I'm not saying that normal women will do this, but you get a sociopathic woman and they're going to use that. They're going to use that social leverage to get what they want.
Yeah.
And they can sense it when you have that vulnerability. When you are in a situation where people are going to say, well, you could have fought back, therefore you weren't raped. But if you fought back, then we would have put you in jail. They know that. All right, let's keep going.
I got another Super Chow you should read really quick.
Okay, I'm going to read this Super Chow. Richard Bear gives us $5 and says, isn't there also a possibility with how selective that one side of the equation becomes, it will have downstream effects of less genetic variation and a high chance of inbreeding too? I recall that there's either an Iceland or Scandinavian country where they had developed an app to check that a potential partner isn't already a relative. Something Habsburg jaw, something Alabama or Kentucky, something Deliverance. Yeah, that is always a problem too. Maybe that's one of the reasons why societies that practice polygamy generally aren't as successful. The low genetic diversity. Okay, let's see how far we can get into this.
Let's go a little more.
Yeah, so what? We just don't have enough war and religion right now? That's our problem?
Yeah, we don't have enough war and religion that historically would have, yeah.
Provided.
Can we go to the next, maybe the next time code?
Apparently weren't going to end up partnered.
Yeah. Actually,
or are we just going to keep going?
Okay, I think the next part is there's genuine and circumstantial incels, two types.
They have a discussion of Peterson, the Jordan.
Yeah, you want to
Peterson.
go to Jordan Peterson approach to addressing the incel issue?
Okay, sure. Because I think we've just talked at length about the potential violence. I don't think honestly, it's not the violence that's going to be the problem. Like, incel violence will always be minimal. The problem is you no longer capture the productivity and work of young men to the creation of your society. And ultimately, what's more likely to happen is another culture is going to come in that's more successful at that and just take over. Okay.
Play some more.
Sleep with her because they see that as like what led to their existence, that they should not have been born, that the relationship that their parents had should never have happened because it wasn't genetically high quality enough. Because in incel communities, there is a big belief in like genetics, heritability, because it allows for this fatalism about their genetic state in the world. Like they're in a weird way like aligned with the perinatalist community, in that they see it as part of their duty to not have kids, to
This feels like
improve.
it's a bit of a digression. Let's move
Yeah.
on to the next one.
I think they're gonna get into it a little bit later, but I mean, pronatalism that's not a community. That's just people having babies. I don't get this. Let's put everything into a category.
To be self-affirmation. It needs to be some form of genuine industry or creativity or ability to move the world forward in a positive direction, which is the thing that women want most in a partner. Like it's not hotness or even social status.
I mean, they like those things too. Those are nice.
Well, some women, like those things, but often not the women you want to marry. That's not what they're optimizing on. I mean, do you really want a thought? Like, do you really want a woman who's out there like banging chads instead of looking for somebody who she respects? And they're like, oh, women are like that. And it's like, no, the techniques that you are using to engage women disproportionately short for women like that. I almost never met women like this when I was dating. And I for my dating period, was dating 5 dates a week for like 2 years. Like, very rarely did I meet these sort of vacuous women that incels talk about existing.
Well, yeah, but they not only do they exist, but they seem to exert a considerable influence on a number of women and what they expect. Like the Manifestels, like she's got 150,000 subscribers, I think, and she is possibly the most hideous goblin of a human being I have ever seen. Like, honestly, when I was watching Manifestel and her attitude towards life, she made me think fondly of Hannah Cox. Which I'm like, can we get a Hannah Cox back? Because it's like staring into an abyss of not just, like, not even, I don't even think she's vacuous. I don't even think Manifestel is vacuous. I think that she's evil. And she's influencing women to be as disgusting as she is. And I think he's undercounting the influence of not just the existence of women who are vacuous, but also how much influence they have over other women.
Yeah.
Because the woman that he's talking to, Simone, is giving him a false impression. Like,
well, these two are married.
Yeah, but she's giving him a false impression of, because Manifestel is hugely popular.
Yes.
And women like Manifestel are hugely popular. And then they do these ridiculous TikTok challenges like, if your partner won't eat shit for you, then he's not for you, or some stupid crap like that. And they influence women to implode their relationships. And it's like, this is a huge part of the problem. And he's talking about women are attracted to someone who's got something, a man who's got something going on. He's got a purpose, right? And that's very true. However, what that filters into a lot of women who watch Manifestel is, I want to get the bag. He's got a bag and I want to get it. So yeah, women are there. It's almost worse to end up with a woman who, like, you can have a woman who has shallow, like, they wants good looking guy, but isn't it sort of worse to end up with a woman who is interested in your sense of purpose because she wants to steal your bag, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't think he's really aware of how popular this attitude is, like, and in how much influence it does have over the current dating market.
Well, and also he went on a lot of dates, but he still only married one person. So how do we know how suitable those dates were?
Yeah, exactly.
Because incels aren't really, like, it's another one of these things that's like really misunderstood. Incels are not guys that can't get laid. Anybody with like $20 can get laid. Like, you can just find a prostitute. They don't want that. Okay, they want something substantial. Maybe they're having trouble getting their foot in the door. Maybe they have a lot of disadvantages. In many cases they do. It's, it is what it is. So the solution, I think, is not to try and guarantee every man gets a woman, because that is a communist solution, and nobody really wants that. But the solution is, like many other forms of inequality, to find ways for individuals to be able to make the most of what they have, and also accept the whatever the result might be. So, you know, you're not looking at your neighbor and saying why I should have what they have and building that resentment. So I think that if you build your own thing, you know, you're either going to be happy with what you've built or you're going to attract someone else eventually. Because I think that overall, most women are drawn to competent men. But I do think that, I think the internet, I don't like to blame the internet for things because I think it's just a tool and you get out of what you want from it. But I do think it has had a impact on women particularly. I think that because it is a social device, and I think women are using it a lot, and I think they are on social media.
It's a force multiplier for women's competition with each other.
Yes, right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's something that is unique to that.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, and the thing is that people will condemn the idea of a traditional society solving the issue of incels or men not being connected to women, and they'll say, "Oh, it's like the Handmaid's Tale," and it isn't. Like, you look at a traditional society, what did they have? They have monasteries, they have priesthoods, they have knights or orders of knights, they have men who do public works. They have they don't just have men deriving a purpose and a connection of society to society through a relationship with women, and that's the big thing. And then even in the family structure, the extended structure of the family would allow men who may not marry to still contribute as uncles and brothers and that kind of thing. You know, to contribute to an extended family. All of that is gone, and we are sort of a breeding ground for potential social destruction because of that. Okay, let's go to the next.
I was gonna say, do you want to because there isn't a lot left after this, honestly. I think the best bits were the dehumanization thing. I mean, there's a bit about the 2 types of incels, but we know about that already. And there's a bit about the importance of parental responsibility. I mean, that's not bad to do that. So, do you want to do that?
What's the final one? The final bit.
The low social intelligence
is a core
factor in creating incels.
Let's do the 2 last bits.
All right.
That there is no backstop for them. Their parents do not love them unconditionally. Their parents will not, and this is something, how dare you say that to your kid? So if your kid's like a serial killer, you're still going to be that mom who's like, I just don't understand, little Tammy couldn't do that. No, I love my kids based on them being good people. And I'm sorry about that, but I want to raise good people. And I think that when you take this attitude towards parenting, you end up with kids who are much more likely to become good people, to not become serial killers or incels for that matter, because, you know, I or at least the fatalist type of incel. Yeah. I'm not particularly worried about any of our kids being the other type of incel. They would need, you know, just genetically, it's unlikely. Because, I think the core thing that creates incels, I should note, is not that people are genetically unattractive. I think even very unattractive men can get women, which we've all seen. Even unattractive poor men can get women. It is that they are genetically have a very low social intelligence and are just very bad at interacting.
That seems to be the correlation.
Well, that's not really helpful. That's the reverse of helpful. That is the excuse that people make that they think justifies marginalizing people, like just not caring. Oh, it's your personality. That's the excuse. I mean, it's basically the same as that's your original sin or that's your karma. That's the excuse you use to ignore the fact that they have problems. They have low social intelligence. Why? Because they're badly socialized. Why? Because they don't have these opportunities that a traditional society would give them to become socialized. What do you think happens when a monk joins a monastic order? What do you think happens when a young squire joins a knight's order? They learn the impulse control, the kind of emotional regulation necessary to do the work that's expected of them, and also function in a community in a way that isn't disruptive. There's nothing like that for young men anymore. We basically just abandon them to games and pornography.
Yep.
And then when they have a low social
And then
IQ.
we blame them for playing games and watching pornography.
When they have a low social IQ, it becomes their problem. Well, where were they supposed to develop the skills necessary to increase their level of IQ, of social IQ?
Yeah.
Where were they supposed to do that?
Well, who do they model their behavior on?
Well, who is going to interact with them to knock off some of those hard edges?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's kids who are severely neglected by their parents, and they do things like they ask constant questions, like as adults, constantly asking questions because they were utterly neglected as a child. Like kids go through this phase where they constantly ask questions. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And if they have parents that actually answer their questions and give them that attention, and I think that's what it's really about, is they just want the attention. And you give that to them and they grow out of it. But what if they didn't get that? Then they become an adult who just pesters people with dumbass questions, And then where are they going to grow out of that? Like, where is the community that they can go to just someone patiently answer their question until they just stop doing it, and there is none. So there's where do people go to get these problems fixed? And this is really something that you can't bootstrap yourself out of, because how do you become properly socialized, by yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, let's finish this off.
All right.
Regulatory factor, because when we see photos of incels, and maybe those are just the ones that are willing to share photos that they don't look that bad. So I totally agree with you. But I think that also has so much to say about society, because yes, you can have low emotional intelligence, but you can also you can be taught what to do. Just like through ABA therapy, autistic children are taught how to fake it in society and pretend that they have emotional intelligence. They're taught how to read facial expressions on a basic level, at least. They're taught how to act empathetic, etc., because it doesn't necessarily come naturally to them.
Guys being like, oh, I'm too autistic for that. And it's like, no, you're not. Like, if you're watching this channel, no, you're not.
You can get over.
I think these two are kind of weirdly on the spectrum, but...
Yeah, but also, like, this is not something that you can just say, oh, just get over it. This is something that requires a lot of work, and where is it available to be done?
Right.
Like, are there gyms for social IQ? I mean, it's almost like everything else is easier, like losing weight, going to the gym, right? All of this stuff is easier. And the one community that really probably was actually getting young men to have more EQ, more social intelligence, was the pickup artist community. And it was endlessly condemned.
Yep.
And I think they actually killed the pickup artistry community. And as a result of that, they got the red pill and Andrew Tate. Well, okay, they're probably going to kill the red pill and Andrew Tate. And then they're probably going to get Drago, the freaking Genghis Khan of the,
Khal Drogo from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that's going to be the next Andrew Tate. Instead of, get yourself some bitches and money, he's going to be like, let's loot Madrid or something. That's going to be the next thing.
Yep. Hey, Alice, can you center your camera a little bit?
Oh.
You're like disappearing off to the side. Okay, here, this is better. It was like turning into like some weird Talking Heads music video art piece. But okay. Do you want to play the next? Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Okay. Let's finish. Let's do it.
You can get through it. And I'd say, like, if you're watching this channel, like if you are a big watcher of our channel, there's
probably autistic.
Well, yeah, there's also a bar of IQ that's required to really.
Oh my God! Really?
Content.
Isn't this the Rick and Morty meme?
For that.
Isn't this the Rick and Morty meme?
Yeah, it's high IQ. Remember we got slammed for that because I said that our concepts are difficult? I'm like, no, it's not difficult because it's high IQ. It's difficult because it's challenging to people's basic identities.
Mm-hmm.
Like, men don't want to recognize vulnerabilities because that's incompatible with taking an identity with rising up to an external
funny.
standard. You know,
That's
and
funny
women
because-
don't want to be held to an external standard because accountability.
I'll take it as a compliment because we've been talking about this stuff like for years, so I'll take it as a compliment.
Yes.
So there you go. This is high IQ stuff, guys.
Yep.
But this is like what we're doing is what they're doing, like cubed. So extra high IQ. Multiplied by the square root of pi.
Our content requires IQ not in linear units, but cubic units.
Our takes are so hot they're measured in Kelvin.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, let's keep going.
Or engage with the content. Well, no, it's true. You know, you can see on YouTube if you search for most watched videos, they are for a much less intelligent audience. And
Well, you mean the ones that I created before became based camp?
yeah, that would be an example. But even those, I think, were pretty highbrow
I'm
compared
sorry,
to.
I'm
I
sorry,
don't
Jesus.
think so.
All right. I think they're just complimenting each other now. So we
Okay,
can-
guys, this is genuinely the Rick and Morty meme. I don't mind these two people, but this is a little bit cringy. Okay, we're so smart. Oh, you're so smart, dear. Yes, I'm so like okay. That's a yeah. Just that's a little bit. That's a little bit cringy, but otherwise they were pretty good though. I think.
Yeah, they're okay. They're okay.
They're okay.
We should wrap it up though.
Well,
So
okay is actually pretty good considering the things that we've dealt with recently.
yeah.
50
That's
shades of
fine.
50 shades of severe autism, shall we say?
Yeah, right.
Okay, all right. So once again, if you want to send us a message at any point in time, sorry about the volume shifts. I'm still getting used to not moving around like a freaking bird. If you would like to send us a message, you can do so at any time, even after the show is done, and we will endeavor to respond to that message at the next available opportunity. And you can do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. We get the full benefit of the funds, and you get the full benefit of sending your comment, not through the YouTube comment enhancement system. So once again, that's feedthebadger.com/justthetip. We are also doing our monthly fundraiser to pay for the various expenses of the show, which you can access at feedthebadger.com/support. And if you'd like to join us during our after shows with our extra content and join me as we examine storytelling in the West and how it works and how to do it ourselves, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/subscribe, where you can get access to our patron community as well as other perks. So feedthebadger.com/justthetip if you want to send us a message, feedthebadger.com/support if you want to make sure we keep continuing, and feedthebadger.com/subscribe if you want to start up a little bit more of a one-on-one relationship with the people involved in the show. All right, back to you, Brian.
Do you have any thank yous to give?
Oh,
before
right. No, well, I mean, the big thank you is Richard Beer for that $500. I did confirm that it was for the fundraiser, so that's a
All
big
right.
thank you.
All right, that's good.
Amazing.
And other than that, nope. There's no thank yous to give.
Okay.
Okay.
It's all right. We're about halfway through the month. We're good. Okay, so if you guys like, I mean, I'm getting better every day. I'm hoping to sound normal by the end of the week. Who knows? But I will be doing shows regardless. So
Yeah,
just hang in
help us
there.
out here. I mean, Brian's being a real trooper, so go to feedthebadger.com and support so that we can do the things for the month. 'Cause he's
Yeah.
not giving up, even though his voice sort of is.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. And please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you so much for coming on today's episode of Maintaining Frame. And we'll talk to you all in the next one.
Better than you? I guess I'm going a little further than you are. Yeah, I'm fucking better than you, okay? Much better than you. You are garbage.